Hello, friends. Today is Wednesday, the 16th of April 2025. And since this is Holy Week, I'm going to continue with my little talks here about the arrest of Jesus, the death, and the resurrection. And I'm looking at the characters in the story. Yes, we talked about the Sanhedrin. We talked about in the previous videos about the trial. We also spoke about yesterday about the role of Judas. And today there are so many important people, but I thought that I would actually focus on the women in this story. There isn't much said in the text about them, not really all that much. We know, of course, I'm not going to talk about the role of his mother, Jesus' mother, the Virgin Mary, because that deserves a place by itself. But about all the other women, we know that there is always, there is a group of women. They're mentioned very sparingly. I think it's only 2 or 3 lines. A group of women who had followed him from the very beginning, from the start in Galilee, and they followed him always at a distance, quietly. I'm going to talk about them. Of course, there is Mary Magdalene representing so much. I'm going to delve a little bit deeper about her role here. And these other women, the Samaritan woman, the other in Simon's house who comes and anoints his feet also. And pretty much that is it. They're not terribly important apart from his mother. They don't seem to be terribly important, or their contribution. But I think their contribution is, because the main thing that we have to remember is that they are the ones there at the foot of the cross. The others dispersed, hide away, go. Yeah, they stay. I think this is important. And they are also the first witness of the resurrection, to the resurrection. It is easy to dismiss, well, a bunch of women there. I mean, no. I think we have to take it seriously. And why would he choose, if we believe, as in faith we believe in the death and the resurrection of Christ, if we are Christians, that it is this role of these women who are always there when everyone has run away. There at the foot of the cross, there at the resurrection, so they are not so useless in the story. What are they representing here? Okay. As I said, the actual text doesn't say very much about them, but it does say a few things. It is, I think, reasonable to assume, or perhaps evident really, that he wanted to bring them or to accept them as part, not of the 12 apostles, but as he was glad he accepted them as part of his disciples. And I'm going to delve a little bit deeper and see that I hope I can persuade you, if you're not, that he actually dignify them at a time when a woman in Jewish law and in Roman law did not really have a voice as such, their testimony was not valid in court. You couldn't sign anything, but not only sign, I mean, whatever, you couldn't bring them to a court to testify. It was not valid. And yet he chooses them to be the first witness at the resurrection. Well, why? I mean, couldn't, more people who could give testimony and you could believe? Why choose women who had not this power legally? I'm going to try to persuade you that he dignified us. As I said, to allow woman to bear witness to the resurrection of Christ. What role these holy women play in the life of Jesus? How do we explain that they were the only ones, at the foot of the cross, together with John, the beloved? We're going to see the difference between Peter, the leader, direction, and John, representing, perhaps I would say, depth, the spiritual. Anyway, representing perhaps more the mystical life, mystical love. More about it in a minute. And they are there when everyone has run away. Who remains there? The women at the foot of the cross. This is not irrelevant. All right. In spite of the fact that very little is said of them in the actual texts, as I said, just a few lines, but I think it has much more substance than it seems at first sight or at first reading. So what we read is about this group of women is always this, just a group of women, that is what they say, that followed him already all the way from Galilee, from the very beginning. In other words, the person of Jesus, the figure of Jesus, had been important enough for them, important enough to attract this group of women, bear in mind what that meant in Jewish culture and in Roman culture. And when we say a group of women who followed him, please go back in time. We are not talking about teenage groupies here. We are talking about sensible, mature, adult women. Mary Salome is the mother of adults, James and John. And so we see them as mature women who have decided to dedicate their lives to following him. Always quietly and always from a distance. Dedicated himself, the text says, to following and to follow and to service. What does it mean, service? Probably actually sustaining them and sustaining him many a time. Physically, perhaps even with food or pennies or whatever, but sustaining them, helping them. And also, and please, I hope I don't sound like a feminist. Please, no, okay? But I'm going to put it to you that they had understood better than men, but please don't blame me, but I do feel that they had understood better than men, better than the actual disciples, the apostles themselves, better understood faith. The Gospel simply says they followed him and served him. And as I said, it sounds as if they sustained him in his mission. I think the link, this follow and serve, is crucial here. Because you see, like the others, at this stage, certainly at the beginning, they cannot possibly know for sure about who Jesus really is. The question is still in the air. It will become obvious and evident and apparent after the resurrection. But yet they recognize, I think, through that clarity, the authority of Jesus, that authority, or whatever they saw in him, made them move, alter their life to continue with this mission of following him. Within this group, one stands out. Just as with the apostles, Peter and John stand out for different reasons. As I said, Peter, the leader, John, the depth of understanding. But with these women, the one that we seem to know more about, although the text don't say much, is Mary Magdalene. Why? She ends up becoming really a representative figure of the church. The Mary Magdalene who had the grace to be there at the resurrection. Of course, no one believed them, as I said. A bunch of women here talking nonsense. And it is understood that the people, the ordinary people, the Jews, would not believe them. But the thing is that not even the apostles believed them at first. The apostles who had heard him speak so many times, there seemed no influence here. Actually, Mary Magdalene, the Pope John Paul II, I think in a writing, referred to her as, quote, the apostle of the apostles. That is what he said. Perhaps we have not quite grasped, perhaps we have not quite managed to squeeze out the full meaning of that appellation. So I'm going to talk about a few of them and the few instances where we see women. The relationship between Christ and women, first of all, is very surprising. It's actually quite scandalous. The anointing at Bethany, you know, the anointing with the oil. Oil always so important. The church carried this tradition. We use oil in the sacraments. But this behavior was kind of scandalous because, you see, it would have been obviously more scandalous to the population at large, but even for the apostles, this woman, a prostitute, okay, who had spent practically a fortune, I'm sure, on these oils, and Judas, of course, who's there, complains about it. Judas of the 20 pieces of silver. But Judas had been a thief, you see, and Judas was the accountant, as it were, of the pennies that they had. He was the one dealing with money. And he complains about that. And it is with the old chestnut, oh, you know, that money should have been invested in helping the poor. Yes, that's an easy one always, okay? Reminds me of what is happening today, perhaps, that, you know, oh, so you are a Christian, so you are supposed to put the other cheek so that I can take advantage of you. Or you are, you know, or using the decency and the goodwill of so many common ordinary people to invert it and use that against them. I don't need to go very far for you to see how this was used about 5 years ago, and it is being used now. The Samaritan woman, that is simply amazing. Why? Because it is really quite a scandalous too. And you can see it, you can sense it in the text. The scandal that even the apostles are scandalized. Jesus is talking to a woman, the Samaritan woman, a woman from Samaria. Okay, she is first of all alone in the middle of the day. No, okay, her brother, her father, her husband were not there to protect her. She was alone. So everyone could see a man approaching her. This was serious. She was also from Samaria. Okay, to summarize it in a very crude way, okay, the people from the south, from Judea, were, if you want to say, I'm just going to summarize it, if you want, much more traditional. Okay, after the captivity at Babylon, they had managed to codify, they were more traditional. The people from the north, Samaria, it was, if I had to equate it with something, I would say, you know, it's like the difference between, you know, a little village in Judea and the big apple. You know, it was more like the big city. It was more, the people were not so, certainly not so traditional. The people, well, perhaps they believed in different things. They certainly had different text, slightly different for the Torah. Some say that it was actually a more ancient text, but in any case, the people from Judea saw them as, you know, moderns or something, or heretical, or something like that. I am summarizing. So she was from there, and she was a woman alone at the well. And Jesus here approaches her and actually seems to, what I capture is that he's actually quite enjoying himself here, really. He's pulling, I think he's pulling her leg a little bit, even, in a rather amusing way, in the way that he mentions, you know, some of her amorous promiscuities, 5 husbands and so on. But the point is that he's talking there to a woman in the middle of the day who is by herself from Samaria. Okay. The tone, the atmosphere is, when he's dealing with women, is actually groundbreaking, is different. And I keep saying scandalous because perhaps it felt like that at the time, at that particular time. how he's going to choose them to be there at the resurrection. At the time, as I said, when the testimony of women was not valid, it did not count. It was not granted validity. I don't know whether this is divine irony or something. Anyway, but there is that. But there is also, if you see, an inversion of human laws. The way I understand it is that actually God is giving women here the authority, the capacity to bear witness, and it is to women, to bear witness to the greatest miracle, the miracle upon which our faith is founded. I mean, this is important. You know, the resurrection. Look, the quiet role in the background, the women always in the background, except for a few cases there. It's always, when they come into his life, there is always a groundbreaking point. A difference from then on. Different from what the apostles are doing. A groundbreaking role they were given in the life of Christ. For the most transcendental fact in the life of Christ, he chooses them to be the first witness. I emphasize this only because nowadays Christ is seen in our day-to-day as, in the criticism of those who make it, as having continued the practices of old, with women at the side. This is false, false, false. You know where they're going. What they want to get to is women priests. It's always that. Because since we have been liberated in the 60s, I don't want to dwell in this at the moment, but I have said this many times. It is as if our womanhood has been disregarded, and we are there to compete with men. And so what we want, what these people want from women, is to equate them with power. Power. And our power rests somewhere. It's also, they say this because, not only because they want power, and they see the priest as the man who does this and who does that, and he's there and so on. There is a certain need, almost psychological need, for a woman to be there, to display herself and to be admired. There is almost a psychological need to be admired. What it is, in fact, is our need to be loved. And when that is not fully expressed or fully felt, admiration takes a role there. So when they say women want to be, they're disregarding all our other contributions just to be like me. The priest is a man, so therefore we have to. That is where they're getting. That is why the greatest sacrifice for a woman, well, two actually. One is motherhood, in the sense that you give yourself now to your children. Your life is going to change completely. You are no longer just yourself. A sacrifice of love. And the other great sacrifice, because of our need to be there, the other great sacrifice is actually to be a nun. Imagine a cloistered nun. No display whatsoever. Is that a sacrifice for a woman or is it not? Okay. Enough of that. But what we have here is Jesus, a rabbi, who actually accepts women around him. That is not the usual thing. A rabbi surrounded by women. Remember also in Lazarus' house, you remember the two sisters, Martha and Mary. And Mary sits down next to him, actually at his feet, I believe, and listens to him. And even Martha, her sister, is scandalized. Women were not allowed to study the Torah. This is new. For her, for Mary to be sitting there listening. Even Martha is scandalized. What are you doing there? My goodness, come here to the kitchen where you're supposed to be. No, she stays there. There is that incident too in Luke 7, in the house of the Pharisee. The woman, yes, Pharisee Simon. And the woman comes in to anoint him and anoint his feet. And Simon is there thinking, I don't think Joshua is very inspired today, because if only he knew who this woman is, a prostitute. My goodness. Let me read you this, because it's actually very moving. I found it very moving. This is, I have my little Vulgate in very tiny writing, lettering. What is a Catholic doing reading the Bible? I'm not. Normally, I just say, I never know where things are. You know, I just say it's in the Gospel somewhere. It doesn't really matter to me whether it's in Luke or Matthew. Anyway, it's there, right? But but this one in Luke 7. Okay, so long chapter, but then at the end, regarding this woman, I hope I can read this properly, because Old English is never very easy for me. And one of the Pharisees desired him, Jesus, to eat with him. And he went into the house of the Pharisee and sat down there to meat. Meat written M-E-A-T. To have lunch, I suppose, right? Okay, to meat. And behold, a woman that was in the city, a sinner, when she knew that he sat at meat in the Pharisee's house, brought an alabaster box of ointment, and standing behind at his feet, she began to wash his feet with tears and wipe them with the hairs of her head, and kissed his feet and anointed them with the ointment. And the Pharisee who had invited him, seeing it, spoke with himself. Okay, so he started thinking, spoke with himself, saying, this man, if he were a prophet, would know surely who and what manner of woman this is, that toucheth him, that she is a sinner. Remember the Pharisees, my goodness, you could not eat with a sinner because he was impure, and so you would get the impurity, you would become impure yourself. So this is kind of scandalous too. So anyway, and Jesus, answering his thoughts, I suppose, said to him, Simon, I have somewhat to say to thee. But he said, Master, say it. And then Jesus with the example, the parable here, always with example, something that you can almost touch, no theories, tangible. And this is the parable. A certain creditor had 2 debtors. The one owed 500 pence, and the other 50. And whereas they had not wherewith to pay, he forgave them both. Which therefore of the 2 loveth him most? Simon answering said, I suppose that he to whom he forgave most. And he said to him, Thou hast judged rightly. And turning to the woman, he said unto Simon, Dost thou see this woman? I entered into thy house. Thou gavest me no water for my feet, but she with tears has washed my feet, and with her hairs has wiped them. Thou gavest me no kiss, but she, since she came in, has not ceased to kiss my feet. My head with oil thou didst not anoint, but she with ointment has anointed my feet. Wherefore I say to thee, many sins are forgiven her, because she has loved much. But to whom less is forgiven, he loves less. And he said to her, Thy sins are forgiven thee. And they that sat at meat with him began to say within themselves, Who is this that forgiveth sins also? And he said to the woman, Thy faith has made thee safe. Go in peace. Thy faith in action, a living faith, not one where you just sit in a library. That, not barren. That you put into action and is alive. Okay. Women, let's see. So women are in this group one of the first followers. The first witnesses at the resurrection. As I said, no legal guarantees there. They can't give testimony of anything. This fact is actually quite compelling if you think about it. Another thing that Jesus dealt with was divorce. Now, a man could divorce you, could repudiate you. I don't know how easy or how difficult it might have been. Probably not that difficult. What happened when a man repudiated you? What did you do then? Probably, I don't know because I don't know enough about this, but probably you had to go back to your parents or your brother, In any case, it had to be extremely humiliating. You understand it in your bones. Yeah, you're sent back like a parcel or something, a returned parcel. In those days, so Jesus then decries divorce and repudiation. In other words, no, you do not repudiate. Could be that she gave you 5 children and she's no longer the most attractive person in the world. But you honor her, nevertheless. And you do not repudiate her. I think this is quite moving. So I see him not allowing divorce as defending women, actually, because the woman was defenseless, you see. He was defending women. He was not chaining them. So a defense of marriage is a defense of women. Again, groundbreaking, revolutionary. For my part, since I am a woman, thank God. Okay. I think you guys are okay and everything, but I personally, we are so complex and you are so simple to us. It's not an insult. You continue being as you are, my dears. I can't think of anything more boring than being a man. I thank God that I am a woman, I tell you. But anyway, never mind. You're fine. Okay. So I just want to give them the little, I mean, they didn't do much, but the little that they did, I think they deserve a little bit of merit here, a little bit of worth. For what they did, I mean, the apostles or those close to him. I was talking about the faith, the fidelity. The apostles sometimes were, defending him. Sometimes they just ran away. Then they would come back and yes, everything was fine. And then they would hide and then they would deny him. And the women, this is the difference. The women were always there, constant, steady. I think that's the difference. And I think it's important to point it out. Some of these features, actually, I have a long note here that I did, sort of equating this with the church, but I think it's going to be a little bit long, and perhaps not appropriate, because I was going to equate it with the Song of Songs and the Church and Christ, but it might be a little bit too long. Anyway. Just let me continue. The opportunity that that opportunity that Jesus gives to women, because in this sense we have sin, we have Adam and Eve, Adam and Eve. Okay, we are told that sin entered through Eve, then Adam. And here the response, it's going to be the opposite. It's like a renewal. First, in the Virgin Mary, the new Eve, not the one that took us into sin, but the one who helps us out of it. But also Virgin Mary, but also that whole group of women who are in a way dignified revitalized with respect to this sin always in their fidelity to Jesus Christ. In some way, it changes that pejorative sign that always associates woman with sin. We see there a fortitude during the Passion. They remain. But also the other women, not only the Virgin. The feminine stays there, reception, receiving the gift, acceptance, and continuity. A fortitude that is true anthropologically so also in the natural order. I say fortitude, I don't want to say resilience or something like that, because men have resilience too, perhaps more than we have, but it's more outward, it's more physical. I want to say fortitude because it's a little bit more spiritual. We see also in these women a concern regarding the concrete, the specific. It's something that surpasses all the circumstances they find themselves in and all fears. A continuance. When Jesus is buried, this is what I mean. When Jesus is buried, for example, they are the ones who continue to worry about, you may say the little things, but the little things are important, okay? They worry about this and that and the other thing, all the funeral rituals. They are all busy bees, arranging everything, the concrete, the specific. In the morning of the Sabbath, they run there. There is also that we see a greater showing through these little texts. They appear not so seldom, but there is a greater affective thing. I don't want to say emotional, also because the word sometimes emotional is used, so emotional in a pejorative kind of sense, but affective from affection, not empathy, please, that horrid German word, frigid, ooh, no, and that affective thing is exemplary. Their behavior constantly during his life and after his death, there is always a continuance there. The men, the apostles, are doing all kinds of. They are always there, providing. It's a continuance, it's stability, it's there. And they go to the burial place. You see, they go alone. Okay? Getting emotional here, I don't know why. They go to the burial place alone, which was not easy. You see how almost they are, who is watching us, To move the tombstone. There is no one else there. There's no one else. Yes, later Peter and John come, but they're just them there. I think it symbolizes a love more generous, less self-centered. A love that puts the beloved, the loved one, buried now, before any other issue. Before their own security, for example. I think he was one of the fathers of the church. It might have been St. John Chrysostom. I'm not sure who he was. That someone asked him this same question: why? How strange for women to be there, the first witnesses at the resurrection. It didn't make sense, they told him. And this father of the church said, because they yearned, they longed for more, and so their love was greater. It was always with the woman deeper, much more complex. Complex not in the sense of difficult, but just, there is a complexity there. They longed for more. Their desires were deeper, yeah. So their love was greater. Could the disciples have lost their faith? Their faith in that the rabbi, Jesus, was going to rise again? Could they have doubted? Yes, I mean, I don't know, but it seems human that they would, once he was dead. So they did the normal thing. They escaped, they hid, they locked themselves in the synagogue for fear of the Jews. They didn't want to come out. Oh dear, okay. Now it's understandable, But you see, this is what I want to point out, that you have Mary Magdalene as an example. Nevertheless, doesn't hide, cannot ignore, cannot forget that she had lived and loved by Christ. Something happened to her that changed her life, and it changed her life. And when she encountered him, and she considered this most important. And the death of him, therefore, does not change anything. It does not change that love. Jesus had died, but he had also transformed her life in such a way that she cannot forget. She cannot ignore him now, even though he's dead. It doesn't matter he's dead. You understand? It goes on. That continuance. She might not have been aware at all, as we discussed yesterday, about Christ's divinity. I mean, they all probably thought that he was the Messiah. We talked about how different interpretations of the Messiah, different ideas, but most of them accepted that he would be a liberator, that he would come and deliver the people of Israel from the Romans, whatever. But it was a temporal power. This was totally different. It was in the spiritual realm, and it is quite possible that, they thought that he was the Messiah, and then perhaps they had some doubts because nothing really was happening. They didn't see him rising against the Romans or anything. I mean, doubts could have. It's human. Okay? But for the most part, they probably believed that he was, the Messiah. But would they, as I asked yesterday, would they have understood his divinity? Probably not before Pentecost. But anyway, I don't know for sure. But there is a fidelity there that overcomes this failure. He was dead. The failure is apparent. They don't know that, okay? And she continued loving in the same extent. And I think I mentioned this because I think this fidelity may not be so strongly present in man as it is in woman, generally speaking. I just want to point that out. And then after the resurrection, you remember, in the garden there, and she tries to get hold of him. She tries to touch him physically. He says, "Do not hold me. Do not touch me." We have to understand, he didn't say, "Don't touch me." I don't suppose it was like that. But do not kind of come near, do not hold me. I'm going to the Father now. So that corporality was no longer there. He says, "I have risen." And he says, "Go and tell all my brothers," the disciples, yeah? That symbolic value, that reality of a heart that shows that love for Christ. And that love that she has is a great, great love. Just to delve a little bit more on this, Mary Magdalene expresses or lives or experiences clearly, I think, the core of the faith. The core of the faith. She may not be certain about many things, but she is certain that this person, Jesus of Nazareth, had loved her, had liberated her. There is, therefore, changed her. Whatever life she had before, changed her profoundly. Major change here that transformed her. And so there is, therefore, a certainty about love. There may be uncertainties about other things, how, when, whatever is going to happen now, I don't know. But yet, that doesn't matter. All the other doubts and questions don't matter, because there is certainty here. There is a loving bond that she has been freed. And that certainty is there, and no one can take it away. She had been loved, and that certainty and that experience do not allow her to separate, disassociate herself, to break away from him. There is that certainty about love, and that to a woman is so much. Anyway, so she wants to anoint the dead body, his dead body, wants to honor him, wants to pay homage to him even. Whatever the cost. And if they go and put her in jail, fine. But she cannot abandon him, because she had been loved. But this is what faith is. Our faith is a faith that is based on the certainty of love. It is that love that gives us that certainty. Certainty. Of course there are doubts about what is going to happen tomorrow, in 10 years' time, whatever. But love stretches also. Love stretches a lot to cover a lot of things. Of course, with Mary Magdalene, I mean, you know, she has been represented because she touches a nerve there. She has been represented. Oh, Mary Magdalene the penitent, Mary Magdalene the courtesan, Mary. In the Middle Ages, with a certain eroticism there, Mary Magdalene, beautiful woman with her hair all the way down to her feet and all kinds of the iconographic representations. The impact was that she knew herself loved and therefore became a witness to that love. Mary Magdalene embodies that, receiving forgiveness, first of all, penance, forgiveness, the fidelity of love, and knowing herself loved. So even though that does not appear much, nonetheless the elements of the human heart are there that somehow she symbolizes. I have to say this too, because today, not particularly like to, but of course today, as you would expect in the literature, if it was at sometimes rather some kind of a touch of eroticism in paintings and things, symbolizing this love. Nowadays, as you can imagine, is altogether crude and vulgar, and it's no longer a subtle eroticism, but just downright pornographic, representing this love by people who cannot understand purity or innocence, really. And it's something that they do with this imagination that they have, rotting imagination, rotting and rotten and decayed and putrid imagination of theirs. But because it is rotten and tainted and soiled, does not understand innocence or purity, and in fact wants to soil everything it touches with their filth, dirty everything, make everything soiled. What do we have here? We have conversion, we have penance, we have love the Lord, we have perseverance in dark times, during that sense where failure, we feel failure when there is no sight of light. We also have the searching and not finding. Of Magdalene. So much searching for love and not finding it. And the loneliness there. And then suddenly, the unexpected surprise of the encounter. To want to seize, to grab someone who cannot be dominated. No, that's not the word. Who cannot be caught. This is important to a woman too. To want to catch someone who cannot be taught. We were talking about yearning and longing. Okay, so that's human, but what is not, well, what is not so natural is then accepting that. That is difficult. It cannot be caught, and therefore we might react with resentment, hatred, you know, that scorn thing. Okay. She accepts it. This is difficult. So, although she does not appear many times, Mary Magdalene, she touches on us every time she appears in the Gospel. She touches a nerve, a fiber there, of great intensity and great depth. She had been a woman plunged there in sin. And what happens is that she has an encounter and she is transformed. There is a conversion. There is a transformation there. That is what keeps it all together. Yeah. Her love. There is this love always there in the background. And some don't quite know what to do with it. Today, for example, we live in a society which understands this in a very limited way, in a very reductionist way. It had, as I said, in some cases in the past had been given that erotism of some kind, but now it's so much worse. And it seems that there is only, as if in our culture, there was only one type of love. No, perhaps two or three. You know, we accept filial love and parental love, okay. But not very much more than that. This other love, a love which is very, very great and very, very deep, and a love that in her is also reverential. But what do people understand about reverence today? Okay. This is a call for us to perhaps understand that love is much, much greater than that, than what we understand today. Sometimes we lose sight of that because we want to put love, like everything else, into boxes and, you know, watertight compartments there. But I don't know, we seem to lose sight of what limitless can be, might be. Okay, so that was my little contribution here to the women who only have a few lines, but I think their contribution was important. Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.